Found out wife's multiple affairs and now she says it was only one time. My wife and I got married 10 years ago after knowing each other for 7 years and dating for about 2. We have one 5-year-old child. I don't think our relationship was ever perfect, but most of the time I thought things were pretty darn good, or at least fine. We didn't have as much sex as I'd prefer during the relationship. After wife stopped working, I wasn't super satisfied with the distribution of household tasks, and after the birth of our child we struggled with all sorts of infant-related things, especially sleep issues. I considered these all acceptable. People's preferences for sex changes over time, and I think everyone has some sort of disagreement about chores. However, things got somewhat worse in the last few years. Wife had an affair with a 23M from Canada. According to her, the affair ran from about April 2020 to September 2020. I found out mid-October 2020. The affair included a lot of sexting and sending photos. I guess there were plans to meet, perhaps even including specific travel plans to a convention, and getting together with other friends. But the closure of the US-Canada border put a stop to that. She met this guy online through an online game. I had played this game briefly with my wife a few years ago when it came out, but I didn't stick with it. Since our son was born 5 years ago, she has been playing this game quite a bit. When our sleep schedules were totally ducked, she would play while breastfeeding and pumping, while I took care of sanitizing and supplementing, donor milk formula, and pumped milk. Eventually things calmed down and our son got on a sleep schedule, then wife would play from about 9 p.m. to 2 a.m. most nights, occasionally as late as 4 a.m. I work 9 to 5 and usually go to bed about midnight, so I'm able to take our son when he wakes at 7 a.m. I feel like a complete idiot because I didn't understand a few red flags. We always had open phones just out of convenience. I would ask her to read my texts and reply if I was driving, etc. At some point, however, she changed her phone password and changed all her messages so they wouldn't appear on the lock screen. Somehow I didn't really think anything of it, and I didn't really have a reason to ask. I always thought affairs were something that would just never happen to us. She also asked to move some money into her old personal checking account, which has been sitting nearly empty since we combined our finances shortly after we got married. Again, no big deal. I considered it reasonable to diversify the finances. The thing that finally led me to suspect something was when I noticed her spending more time in the bathroom. At some point, she came out with red eyes a few times. When I asked about it, she had pretty nonsensical explanations for why she was crying. Around this time, she also said she was going to be on a Discord call with a mutual female friend of hers, but when I walked by her desktop on the way to the bathroom, I saw a 23M's name. It wouldn't have made me think twice if she said she was calling him, but since it wasn't who she said it was, I began to wonder. So I reinstalled the online game and logged in and played a few times with her, and I began chatting with the friend group she had developed. I could write a whole post about these people, and they've been the topic of a few therapy sessions for sure. But the short story is that a few of them are real talkers, and over just a few days I basically got it out of one of them that wife was having an affair with 23M. I sat down with wife and asked what was going on. I got some sort of runaround about an inappropriate joke from 23M, and she was sort of scolding him for that. I pressed more that evening and wife finally came clean about the whole thing. At the same time, she also informed me about some important parts of her past I never knew about, that I will mention later. We both started individual therapy and couples therapy basically immediately, and have been working on things since. My wife told me what the timeline of the affair was, to the best of her memory. They'd been friends for about 2 years, the affair ran from about April to September. The reason she was crying was that 23M began flirting with another woman closer to his age, and wife felt very hurt by that. 23M felt the relationship with my wife wasn't that serious, and that he was just following her lead and having some fun. And he wanted to give her some kind of self-esteem boost. On the night I found out about the affair, my wife also revealed that had various misusive relationships in college, about 15 years ago. The worst one was before I met. I was vaguely aware of him, but apparently the misuse was a lot worse than was ever revealed to me. I guess she brought this up at this time too, because she felt it was relevant to why the affair happened. I'm really not sure. In therapy, we've had discussions that past misuse doesn't excuse cheating. I struggle to know what to make of this, but also I'm really hurt that she never shared that with me, especially when she talked about those things with 23M. A few weeks after the affair discovery day, wife revealed that she had cheated in past relationships also. Wife was engaged to be married about 3 years before we started dating. She cancelled that wedding just a few weeks before the day. I remember that distinctly since I was invited, and we were friends at the time. I learned that the reason she cancelled the wedding was that she had sex with my then roommate, who was, obviously, not her fiancé. I then found out she cheated in a few other relationships after that, and I then connected a few other dots. When we first met in college, she offered to make out with me even though she was dating someone at the time. I declined. I still have the AIM chat log for this offer from way back in the day. This is something like 5 or 7 years before we started dating. I know she has recently lied to me about the number of partners she has had. And it bothers me that she's still lying about these things, even though they are ancient history. I do have concerns in the back of my mind that she has cheated on me before, although she swears she hasn't. Initially, my wife wanted to remain friends with her affair partner, and that went on for a couple of months. She believed she could set reasonable boundaries and stick with them. The combined effort of our therapists apparently talked her out of that, and we cut ties with 23M, using a fairly unmodified stock letter we found online. However, there was some additional letter writing over the next 6 months. It all went through our therapists, and I read wife's messages and his responses. It was still incredibly painful, and she put a huge amount of effort into these couple of messages, so that she could give him a goodbye that respected the friendship that they had. That letter writing concluded in April of this year. Since then, I think wife considers the matter closed and believes that things are back to normal. I don't feel great yet though. When we started dating, we began having PIV sex after maybe 2 months. It was great, and I hadn't had much experience in that area. After dating for about a year, she wanted to begin abstaining from sex until we were married. Of course, when your partner doesn't want to engage in something, you accept that and go along with it. At the time, I felt that pressing for reasons why would be like challenging the request, and would be inappropriate. Obviously, no one likes a sex pest, so we didn't discuss it much. We actually ended up abstaining from all sexual conduct until our marriage about 2 years later, although I think we probably had a couple of slip-ups in there. But after the wedding, the sex never really returned. Even on our honeymoon and a few nice vacations when I thought things might happen, it didn't. So we were having sex maybe once every other month at that point, then it dropped off to perhaps a couple of times a year. I know we went greater than 1 year at a time without sex a few times. At some point we decided to have a kid, and after being off birth control for a few months, we went through the motions. After she got pregnant, we didn't have sex for a very long time. We tried again for a second child during the affair, and had a termination shortly before I found out about the affair. I was sort of accepting about the lack of sex and other forms of intimacy in our relationship, because other role models in my life who were married seemed to have sexless marriages. I've only had one partner before my wife, and I know she's had about 20, so I figured maybe she got it out of her system in her youth. But I'm really hurt that the affair had her so excited to do sexual things with this other guy. I'm also hurt because even when we were abstaining, she still talked about how excited she was to be married and have sex with me, and I was really looking forward to that aspect of our relationship. We can't effectively discuss this, even in couples therapy, because she shuts down discussions about sex by asserting you're a guy who only thinks about sex, and the therapist seems to largely acknowledge that sex is an important part of a relationship but never pushes the discussion. After asking and being turned down many times, I eventually stopped asking. Even more troublesome than the affair is a feeling that I can't trust my wife and that she has never really confided in me. She has shared her past traumas with 23M, and I think her past infidelity. Is it reasonable to expect those disclosures from my wife? What things should you never tell your spouse about yourself? I've looked back at old chat logs from when we were deciding if we were going to date or not. During those conversations we directly discussed her cancelled marriage, and she was unambiguously and boldly dishonest about that. Just last week she admitted to having anxiety even as a child, but she deliberately hid that from me because she feels no one likes an anxious person. And she directly said that she didn't tell me about her past because she thinks I wouldn't have married her if she did. In general, I think she believes it's okay to hide things or lie if you're doing it to protect someone. She acknowledges that the affair wasn't okay, but she felt it was okay to hide it because she knew that it would hurt me. I bring this up more because I'm concerned about the attitude than the anxiety itself. But at the same time, our couples therapist suggests that one person can't be everything to someone, which apparently means that full disclosure about past trauma isn't to be expected between spouses. In therapy, we've discussed the reasons this happened. Wife felt unhappy in the marriage and believed it was over. I believe the separate bank account was perhaps runaway to Canada money, but she stated it was money for her to restart her life when I found out and divorced her. Why was she unhappy? The most concrete answer she has for that is that she didn't feel seen. But now I ask how things are going now, and she says everything is great and she's happy in the marriage. I honestly don't feel like I've changed that much on a day-to-day basis. Both of us have physical touch as one of our love languages, but there's not much physical intimacy. Our last therapy session we discussed how she doesn't like to be touched sometimes. There's not much sex, although shortly after the affair we had a few months of regular sex, much more than any other time in our relationship. But I think maybe she didn't enjoy it, although she insisted she did. We do cuddle sometimes when she's okay with that, mostly on our once-per-week date night, which is watching TV shows from when our child falls asleep at 9 p.m. to about 11:30 p.m. when I have to go to bed and she gets back on her computer, or maybe joins me. I'm not really satisfied with our date night. I recognize it's hard with a child that can't be left alone and during a pandemic. Oftentimes, on Wednesday, wife will point out that we hung out on Monday or Tuesday, so that counts as date night. Or she's got an online event or plans with an online friend, so we can push date night back to another day. I'm fine with rescheduling, but it makes me feel like I'm not a priority. Gaming on our separate computers or watching TV shows isn't really filling my love tank. She doesn't like doing stuff outside and doesn't have interest in board games or those kinds of face-to-face interaction ideas. But at the same time, I don't have any other ideas of what might be fulfilling for me, so I can't blame her for that. I work 9 to 5 from home, usually locked in my office to keep distractions down, but I do usually come out to make lunch for everyone and deal with various issues with the kid when wife has to go to the bathroom, or it's something that requires one adult to deal with. The interruptions do add up to a lot of time though, and when the day is done, wife is exhausted from basically just watching the kid, so there's always dirty dishes and meals to prepare, etc. From her perspective, she's been harassed by the kid all day, so at 5 p.m., it's my turn to watch him. I totally get it, but it also means there's not much relaxation time for me. My therapist pushes hard on the expectation that a stay-at-home parent should be able to take care of meals and laundry, in addition to the child, to balance a working partner. I don't know where to draw that line. I grew up in a family with a working father and a stay-at-home mom of 3 kids. Both parents worked really hard, but I know my mom had the brunt of indoor household tasks. And it's hard to say because, yesterday, wife cleaned the birdcage and folded a load of towels and did half the meal prep all in one day, but today she napped all day while the child watched Minecraft videos while I worked. So there are good days and bad days. Wife's therapist recommended she see her normal doctor for an SSRI and she started that a month ago. She says it makes her less anxious and she says she seems to feel better in general, but it also makes her sleepy and she kinda just cares less about things in general. Obligations like date night, hanging out with her other online friends, and household chores just matter less. No idea what to make of that. It's been 8 months now since the reveal of the affair and things have settled down. I'm quite sure she's not cheating now. She says she's happy. We don't fight, and we work together pretty well to take care of our child. Division of household tasks isn't great, but I don't really care enough to make a huge issue out of it. Things are basically working, and we've hit a steady state she's happy with. I don't feel like things are particularly different now than they were before or during the affair, so I struggle to understand why she says she's been happy for the last 6 months, but wasn't happy before/during the affair. I think maybe labeling herself as unhappy is just a way to justify the affair, but who knows? So I've been working on this with my therapist, and I'm trying to figure out if I feel like things are ever going to feel better in this relationship. I'm scared to cut it off, because it's going to be a nightmare to split assets and figure out what joint custody of our 5-year-old child looks like. I know sometimes people say that it's better for the child for the parents to be out of a bad relationship, but we're not constantly fighting, and I think we provide a loving home. So I'm not sure. I feel like I'm not crazily unhappy, I'm just floating somewhere a little lower than meh. Should I end an okay thing for the hope of something good? I'm sorry this is incredibly long, I was concerned about leaving out important details or misrepresenting something. Edit. Do you think you'd be happier outside the relationship? With someone else or on your own? I guess that's the big question I have to figure out. In general, I am perfectly fine on my own. I have plenty of hobbies and friends that I can see a couple times a week. I could imagine myself in a much better relationship too, if that were to ever work out. Do you trust her not to cheat again when she's feeling unhappy? I'm not sure. This is the first time she's ever gotten caught cheating. It seems to have made a big impact on her. Our couples therapist said she didn't see it happening again soon. Her repeated past cheating is really concerning. Have you completely forgiven her for her cheating? I'm not sure. I've read a few books since then on affairs and forgiveness, etc. Obviously, it's something you never forget, it's just something you think about less and less. Forgiveness is more about setting yourself free and allowing yourself to move past the transgression. At first, I expected it to be a big checkbox, a time before forgiveness and a time after that. But I guess it's more of a slow thing. I don't think I'm 100% there. Would she have given you the same grace had it been you cheating and planning to start a new life somewhere? She insists that she wouldn't have considered it a big deal. She said she'd ask if it was over, and if it was, we would just move on. I don't think that's true. When we first started dating, she was very anxious about me cheating on her or dumping her. I didn't really understand that, and it seemed so foreign and impossible that I just reassured her and moved on. But she made it clear that it would be the end of us dating if I were to cheat. After a year or so of dating, she never brought it up again. My therapist said the exact same thing yesterday about looking back at my life when I'm 60 and seeing if I'd regret staying. It's not that I'm completely unhappy now. I have hobbies I enjoy, I like my work, and I have a handful of good friends. I guess I need to do some soul searching there. A lot of people, historically, married for reasons other than love, like financial security, etc. Although she doesn't make any money, she is a decent parenting partner who is doing her best in that area. I guess that's the best defense I can muster for staying. We have reached the end of the story. Let's listen to some of the comments by our Reddit listeners. Comment 1. Frankly, I wouldn't be able to trust anything she says. She has an established lifelong pattern of lying and cheating. I seriously doubt she was abstinent all that time you were not getting sex. I would get a DNA test on your kid. Who is the breadwinner here? OP reply. I make a pretty decent, although inconsistent, amount of money. She used to work before our child was born, but the stress of her job was causing trouble conceiving, so she quit a few months before we got pregnant with our first. My kid looks just like me, and things were better in our relationship when he was born. I dunno if I'm that concerned about that. Yeah, I can't put the pieces together on the abstaining thing. Both my therapist and our couples therapist can't really understand it either. Comment 2. This whole post was all about her with a little of you trickled in. Do you want to live this way? Meh. That's no life. You're worried about her happiness, what about yours? She's got some deep-seated issues that aren't going away. Great, she's getting help, but this isn't a year or two of therapy, this is a lifetime. Relapse is highly probable. It's your life, but I'd cut my losses. Your child deserves a happy father, not a meh one. OP reply. Yeah, thank you for that observation. I hadn't thought about it that way. I guess I find it hard to think about what I really want for my life. I'm an analytical person, so I tend to approach problems in a way that looks at all the facts. I struggle with vague questions like, am I happy? I do wonder if even if this course of new meds changes things for her, if it will really change things in a permanent way, or if the cheating relapses or what. I'm kind of surprised by how unanimous the comments are about the cheating going to happen again, and how insistent people are that it happened before. Cheating wife got ashamed and moved out after I caught her talking to her AP. My wife and I got married in October. I'm 28, she's 23. A few weeks ago, my wife came home with news about her doctor's appointment. She thought she had a yeast infection. Yeast infections have always been common with her, even before we met 5 years ago. Instead of a yeast infection, she told me she had an STI, chlamydia. I didn't say much about it. I'm pre-med. I took my MCAT. I know about STIs simply from my classes, and I've had a couple in the past. I made it my goal to not get angry and try to talk calmly to her. She told me she got it from her sister, who was diagnosed with it, and it spread because they were trying on the same clothes. I didn't believe this, so I texted her mother in the morning asking if she knew anything about either of her daughters having an STI. I text her mother because the sister is 17 with severe anxiety. I assumed that if the sister went to a doctor, the mom took her. Her mother had no idea what I was talking about. I text that same sister, asking her if she knew anything. She told me no. I called my wife out on her lie and told her she needed to explain, and she told me she really didn't know how she got it, but she felt like she had to tell me something because she knew I would question it. I went and got tested and sure enough, I had it. I want to note that chlamydia is a difficult subject because at this current moment of time, I wasn't sure if she cheated, because this specific STI won't always show symptoms. One of us could have had it and never knew. I also want to make 2 more things clear before I continue. 1. My wife and I had a rocky start the first 2 years of our relationship, which started in 2016. The rocky start was my fault. I had commitment issues, and we were on-off. During that time, we both saw different people at different times. 2. The last person I slept before I got back with my wife had the same STI. It was supposed to be treated. Maybe it wasn't cleared. I bring up those 2 points because in my head, I wanted to believe that maybe I was the cause, and we just never knew. Fast forward 2 weeks, and we are mostly okay. It doesn't really get brought up, and I just assumed I was the cause. One Sunday, we were watching a movie and her phone started to ring. I look at the caller ID, and it is the past romantic partner from the title of this post, PRP for short. PRP equals past romantic partner. PRP was prevalent in our relationship when I fully committed to my wife. She broke things off with PRP because I confessed I wanted to be with her, no BS this time. For the better half of a year, PRP purposely tried to break us up. She knew, I knew it, and he knew it. At one point, I even asked why she kept PRP around because she knew what he was trying to do, and her response was, just in case you leave me. At the time, it hurt, but I could kind of get it. I was a non-committal a-hole. I wasn't going to be controlling and tell her she wasn't allowed to be his friend or give her an ultimatum. I wanted her to know I trusted her, and I've never been the one to want to go through someone's phone and see who they are always talking to. Well, at some point, I thought she finally understood what he was doing, because she told me she blocked him on Snapchat and Instagram, and he never had a Facebook. Trust me, I tried looking. We got engaged a year later, and I haven't heard about him since we moved in together 2 years ago. 5 days have gone by since his phone call. She never answered that night, so I never found out why he called. On the 5th day since it happened, I told my wife that it would make me feel better if she would let me go through her phone. I had too much of a bad feeling about this, and I thought the timing was too convenient because of the STI. Her response to me wanting to go through her phone? She was fine with it. She opened all the apps, and the ones I wanted to open. She opened her text message conversation with him and showed me that he was checking up on the situation, because she had texted him about the STI since they had slept together before our relationship. This is when things take a horrible turn. I started scrolling up the conversation. I get to August 18th of this year, 2 months before our wedding and a month before my MCAT. I see them flirting with each other. I only saw 3 texts before she started fighting me for her phone, but they said, "Good morning, lover, good morning, beautiful. I'll be thinking about you all day." For the next hour, my wife and I wrestled for her phone. I kept it out of arm's reach, because I wanted to see what they were saying to each other. She fought me because she didn't want me to see. She was yelling at me, telling me to give her back the phone. I want to make sure everyone is aware that neither her nor I tried to hurt each other. I was trying to get to spots where I could read it, and she was lunging and pushing on me to reach her phone. We both had bruises, but it wasn't violent. I finally gave up and gave her back the phone and just went to work while she cried and packed some things to go to her parents, even though I didn't kick her out. She came home the next day. We went out for breakfast, we talked about what we needed to do to work on things for our marriage. She did inform me that she sought him out because she felt like she couldn't come to me while I was studying and felt like a burden. She also never tried. The day she moved back in was a Sunday. For the next week, I didn't see my wife much. Not because I didn't want to, but because of work. I was working 12-hour days, and once I was off work, she was asleep since she had to be up early in the morning for her job. By Saturday, I text her at work, telling her I miss her, and that I didn't want to work, and I just wanted to spend time with her. When we were both home that night, we went and laid down and did just that. When she woke up in the morning, I took her to get coffee and donuts, then we watched Bill Burr for a bit, then cleaned our home, then went out for lunch. Now, we are getting to current events. When we were out at lunch, our neighbor asked if she wanted to hang out. This wouldn't mean anything, because they are wonderful friends, and they have the same profession, so a lot of venting and complaining about their jobs. They can relate to each other, and it had been a few months since they last hung out. It wasn't uncommon if they hung out at each other's homes for 5+ hours at a time. They met up around 1:30 p.m. Around 4 p.m., I knocked on our neighbor's door to come see my wife. I asked what they were up to, gave her a hug, and told her I was tired, and I was going to take a nap. All of this happened at the doorway, literally one step through the door. I just wanted to see my wife since, like I said earlier, I missed her most of the week. My wife gets us Chipotle around 6 p.m., and we eat dinner together. I could tell something was up, but she wouldn't tell me when I asked. She went back to our neighbor's home, and at 8:30, she came into our home with our neighbor, and said that she is going to her mom's. I asked her what was going on and what was wrong, but that's all she would tell me. She packed a pair of clothes, left and didn't say a word to me for the rest of the evening. I called her 4x, and she didn't answer. She didn't text me or get a hold of me in any way. The next morning, she texts me saying she is fine, and me coming over and questioning what she was doing did not help her with her thoughts from the past few weeks, and even our neighbor asked why it seemed like I was looking for something. Apparently, they both felt like it was odd for me to check up on my wife, and they thought I was looking for someone who wasn't supposed to be there. She felt like I didn't trust her. I think I would have a good reason not to trust her if I didn't. That same day, she didn't talk to me. She told me she is coming by to pack some things and stay at her mom's a bit. She basically just grabbed some clothes and essentials. That was Monday of this week. When she left on Monday, she left her cat at our home, and told us she would be coming back. I told her I would give her the space she wants, and I wouldn't text her or bother her, and if she needs me, I'm here for her. She got a hold of me for the first time on Thursday, and it was about an errand she couldn't complete, so she asked me to. We talked on the phone for almost an hour on Thursday, and we talked about our current situation. She told me she doesn't want to get divorced, but wonders if we would be better off as friends. She is upset because in her mind, marriages are supposed to be blissful the first few months and ours has been a wreck, to call it something. I did try to tell her that marriages are hard, and they take effort. Sometimes marriages start off rough. I feel like her comment about marriages being blissful gave me some insight into her mind, and that being, that she wanted the idea of marriage more than actually being ready for the commitment and work that a marriage requires. I have been doing my best to be patient and try to give her the space she wants. I've been hoping that we can work things out, but I feel like she is running away from the problems she caused and left me the first sign of our marriage getting rough. She was never like this in the past, and has never been a red flag that I thought we should be aware of. She's always tried her best to communicate with me through our problems, tried, being the important word here since she doesn't communicate well. Today, I texted her saying I wish you were home. 3 minutes before my work shift started. No response. Tonight, I came home after working 10 hours to see that she came by and moved her cat to her mom's. I want to give up, but I also want to hope she turns this around.